You may have experienced that strange kind of exhaustion, before the kind where your body is desperate for rest, but your mind keeps racing through endless scenarios, fears, and expectations. Even in complete silence, something inside you stays tense, as if letting go of control would somehow put your life at risk. Yet beneath that restlessness often lies a quiet, hidden pain. The Buddha observed that an anxious mind can create a second layer of suffering that is even heavier than the events themselves. If these words speak to your heart, simply write, "I choose inner peace." And if a part of you has been searching for a deeper sense of refuge for a long time, subscribe to Timeless Dharma and stay with us until the end. Before this reflection is over, you'll understand why some forms of suffering remain long after the original cause has disappeared. The Dhammapada reminds us that an undisciplined mind leads to suffering. Simply understanding this opens a quiet doorway to a much deeper truth. For more than 2,000 years, the teachings of the Dharma have returned again and again to the same insight. People rarely suffer only because of what happens to them. More often, they suffer because of what they try to hold on to, control, or keep from changing. Today, this truth is often misunderstood. Many people believe that letting go means giving up, becoming passive, or no longer caring about their lives. But the Buddha pointed to something far more subtle. Throughout many of the suttas, he explained that attachment arises whenever the mind clings to something that is, by its very nature, impermanent. That is exactly what we do with our relationships, our future, our self-image, our success, and even our wounds. We constantly check our phones, imagine endless possibilities, compare our lives to everyone else's, and search for a certainty that the world can never truly provide. The mysterious suffering mentioned earlier doesn't always come from the situation itself. More often, it comes from the inner battle against what is already unfolding. Understanding this brings the first sense of relief, but what the Buddha truly understood about suffering goes much deeper. As you begin to realize that suffering doesn't always come from events themselves, a deeper understanding starts to emerge. Behind every excessive worry and every painful attachment are invisible patterns the mind has been protecting for a very long time. The Dharma does not ask us to judge these patterns. It simply invites us to observe them honestly. Inner freedom doesn't appear when life finally becomes perfect. It begins when we stop ignoring certain truths. Now we will walk through these inner gateways to freedom, one by one, to understand how so much inner turmoil can gradually become peace when the mind learns to release what it was never meant to control. The first inner gateway to freedom you should notice today is this. Your mind often mistakes vigilance for control. Many people live in constant tension because, deep down, they believe that thinking more will somehow protect them from suffering. They replay conversations, anticipate problems, imagine future scenarios, and try to prepare for every possible outcome. But the more they try to predict everything, the further inner peace slips away. The Buddha observed that an untrained mind constantly chases its own mental creations. The Dhammapada teaches that an unsettled mind pulls a person into suffering just as a wheel follows the ox pulling the cart. In modern life, this shows up when you constantly check your phone, worry because someone hasn't replied yet, or fear a future that doesn't even exist. Real security does not come from absolute control. It begins when you accept that some things will always remain unknown. Sometimes peace begins the moment you stop negotiating with uncertainty. The second inner gateway to freedom you should notice today is this. Much of our suffering continues because the mind quietly refuses to accept change. A relationship changes. A dream falls apart. Someone walks away. A season of life comes to an end. Yet something inside us keeps insisting that everything should go back to the way it used to be. The Buddha taught that impermanence flows through all existence. Nothing stays the same, no matter how deeply we wish it would. This truth sounds simple, but it becomes incredibly difficult when the heart is involved. In everyday life, this happens when you replay happy memories over and over, compare the present to an idealized past, or silently reject a reality that has already become part of your life. The more the mind resists the natural movement of life, the longer the pain remains. Accepting impermanence doesn't mean enjoying loss. It means recognizing that life moves according to its own nature. When you stop fighting what is already changing, an incredible amount of energy becomes available to fully experience what is still here. The third inner gateway to freedom you should notice today is this. Sometimes your emotional exhaustion comes more from your expectations than from the events themselves. Many people suffer because they have built invisible stories in their minds. They expect a certain kind of recognition, a specific proof of love, quick success, or answers that perfectly match their hopes. When reality unfolds differently, deep frustration takes root. In many of his teachings, the Buddha explained that attachment is not limited to people or possessions. We also become attached to the ideas we create about them. In a relationship, you may suffer more because of the life you imagined than because of what is actually happening. At work, you may feel wounded not by the situation itself, but by the gap between your expectations and reality. Seeing this takes courage, but transformation begins the moment you stop demanding that life unfold exactly according to your mental projections. The softer your expectations become, the more naturally gratitude finds its way back into your life. The fourth inner gateway to freedom you should notice today is this. Some wounds remain open because they have quietly become part of your identity. An old disappointment, heartbreak, humiliation, or betrayal can slowly shape the way you see yourself. The mind keeps replaying the same story over and over. The Buddha taught that attachment to the self is one of the deepest sources of suffering. We become so identified with our experiences that we forget they are only one part of our journey. In modern life, this shows up when someone continues to see themselves as abandoned, misunderstood, or incapable long after those events have passed. The more this identity is reinforced, the more real it feels. But you are not your wound. You are not your failure. You are not your past. The moment you learn to observe your pain without becoming your pain, a vast inner space begins to open. And within that space, the quiet rebuilding of inner freedom often begins. The fifth inner gateway to freedom you should notice today is this. The mind often searches for peace in places where it can never truly be found. It believes everything will be better when someone comes back, when a situation changes, or when a certain goal is finally achieved. So it keeps postponing happiness. The Buddha recognized that chasing desire endlessly creates an ongoing cycle of dissatisfaction. Even after we get what we want, another desire quickly takes its place. In today's world, many people live this way for years. They believe their happiness depends on a promotion, outside validation, or the perfect relationship. Yet every fulfilled expectation is soon replaced by another. Lasting peace does not come from collecting favorable circumstances. It arises when the mind stops tying happiness to future conditions. Often, the day you stop waiting for the perfect life is the day you truly begin to live. As the mind starts recognizing the obvious causes of its suffering, an even quieter layer begins to reveal itself. Behind worries, expectations, and attachments are often illusions so familiar that they feel like reality itself. The Dharma invites us to look deeper, not to judge ourselves, but to understand. The first silent illusion the mind protects without realizing it is the belief that everything will finally be okay once certain external conditions are met. Many people spend their lives postponing peace. They believe they'll be happy when they find the right partner, earn more money, or achieve greater stability. But once those things arrive, another expectation usually takes their place. The Buddha taught that a mind attached to desire is like someone trying to quench their thirst with salt water. The more they drink, the thirstier they become. In modern life, this illusion appears whenever you keep pushing your happiness into an imagined future. You believe peace is somewhere ahead of you, when in reality, it can only exist in the present moment. Understanding this doesn't mean giving up on your dreams. It simply means no longer making your well-being dependent on achieving them. Freedom often begins the moment you stop living in constant anticipation of a better tomorrow. The second silent illusion the mind protects without realizing it is the belief that certain wounds must be held onto to prevent them from happening again. After betrayal, rejection, or disappointment, many people cling to their pain as a form of protection. Deep down, they believe that staying guarded will keep them from being hurt again. But over time, that constant vigilance becomes an inner prison. In many of his teachings, the Buddha explained that repeatedly feeding painful memories is like willingly carrying a burden that already belongs to the past. The event is over, yet the mind keeps reliving it. In relationships, this can make it impossible to love fully. At work, it can keep you from taking healthy risks. In everyday life, it can turn every new situation into a potential threat. The wisdom of the Dharma does not ask you to forget the lessons of the past. It asks you to stop confusing wisdom with emotional imprisonment. A healed wound becomes valuable experience. A wound that is constantly reopened becomes a permanent source of suffering. The third silent illusion the mind protects without realizing it is the belief that your worth depends on how other people see you. This illusion is especially powerful in today's world. Many people measure their value through approval, compliments, attention, or recognition. When that validation disappears, a deep emptiness takes its place. But the Buddha observed long ago that anything dependent on external conditions is inherently unstable. If your self-worth depends on other people's opinions, then your peace will always depend on something you cannot control. This shows up whenever you constantly try to please everyone, fear, rejection, or change who you are just to be accepted. The problem isn't receiving appreciation. The problem is believing it determines your value. The moment you realize your dignity does not depend on the applause of the world, something deep inside begins to relax. From there, you begin living with greater authenticity and genuine freedom. The fourth silent illusion the mind protects without realizing it is the belief that thinking harder will eventually solve every uncertainty. Many people live in non-stop mental activity. They analyze, predict, calculate, and endlessly revisit the same questions. They believe that if they just think long enough, they'll finally achieve complete certainty. Yet the Buddha reminded us that some suffering is not caused by a lack of answers, but by our inability to accept that some answers cannot come immediately. In modern life, this illusion fuels anxiety, sleepless nights, and obsessive thinking. The more the mind tries to understand everything, the more new worries it discovers. Eventually, it becomes trapped inside its own mental creations. Mindfulness offers a different path. It invites you to return to what is actually here, right now. Not every question needs to be answered today. Some questions naturally fade away once the mind stops feeding them over and over. The fifth silent illusion the mind protects without realizing it is the belief that letting go means losing something important. This may be one of the deepest beliefs we carry. Many people cling to their fears, expectations, and attachments because they believe that releasing them would mean losing part of who they are. But the Dharma teaches a different truth. Suffering is not created by life's natural movement. It is created by the inner resistance to that movement. When you squeeze a handful of sand tightly in your fist, it slips through your fingers. When you gently open your hand, the sand can simply rest there without struggle. The same is often true of relationships, emotions, and dreams. Letting go does not mean you stop loving or stop taking action. It means you stop fighting what is no longer yours to control. And that is exactly where true inner freedom begins. Understanding the deeper causes of suffering already changes something. But no matter how accurate an insight may be, it cannot transform your life until it becomes something you actually live. The Dharma never stops at theory. It always points toward quiet daily practice. That is why there are gentle inner realignments of the mind that can gradually transform anxiety into presence, restlessness into clarity, and resistance into lasting inner peace. The first quiet realignment of the mind you can begin today is learning to observe your thoughts without immediately obeying them. Much of our suffering is fueled by an almost automatic habit. A thought appears, and the mind instantly treats it as the truth. A worry arises, and it becomes a complete story. A fear appears, and it is accepted as certainty. The Buddha taught that mindful awareness allows us to see mental experiences exactly as they are. In many of the suttas, he encouraged people to observe the mind the same way they would watch clouds drifting across the sky. In modern life, this practice becomes especially valuable when you constantly anticipate problems or when your mind keeps returning to the same worry. Instead of fighting the thought, simply notice that it is there. Notice how it arises. Notice how it moves. Notice how it fades away. At first, this feels difficult because reacting has become such a deeply ingrained habit. But with time, you discover an essential truth. You do not have to follow every thought that passes through your mind. And that simple realization begins creating more space, more calm, and greater inner freedom. The second quiet realignment of the mind you can begin today is intentionally creating small moments of silence throughout your day. Many people live in a constant stream of stimulation. Notifications, conversations, information, worries, and distractions continuously demand their attention. The mind is rarely given a chance to settle. Yet in the Dharma tradition, silence is not an absence. It is a space where awareness naturally regains its clarity. The Buddha regularly withdrew into quiet places to observe the deeper movements of the mind. Even today, just a few minutes of silence can make an enormous difference. Simply sit down without trying to accomplish anything. Allow your thoughts to come and go without chasing them. Notice your breathing. Listen to the silence that exists beneath the noise inside your mind. At first, your restlessness may seem even stronger, but gradually, something begins to reorganize itself. You discover that calm is not created by external circumstances. It has been there all along, hidden beneath the noise. Silence then becomes a quiet refuge you can return to whenever life feels overwhelming. The third quiet realignment of the mind you can begin today is consciously accepting what already exists instead of using all your energy to fight it. Much emotional exhaustion comes from this constant resistance. A situation already exists, yet the mind keeps insisting it should be different. A loss has happened, yet the heart still refuses to accept it. A difficult season has arrived, yet something inside continues fighting against its presence. The Buddha taught that suffering grows whenever the mind refuses what is already real. Acceptance does not mean approving of hardship or enjoying it. It simply means honestly acknowledging that it is here. In everyday life, this practice becomes powerful whenever you experience disappointment, change, or uncertainty. Every time you stop resisting reality, even for a moment, a portion of your energy returns to you. What once felt unbearable often becomes lighter the moment you stop waging an endless inner war against it. Acceptance is not weakness. More often than not, it is the quiet beginning of healing. The fourth quiet realignment of the mind you can begin today is learning to return to the present moment again and again. An anxious mind rarely lives here. It travels into the future to predict problems or returns to the past to replay regrets. Meanwhile, real life continues unfolding without it. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha repeatedly emphasized the importance of returning to direct present moment experience. Breathe with awareness. Walk with awareness. Eat with awareness. Listen with awareness. These practices may seem simple, but they profoundly transform your relationship with your own mind. As your attention returns to the present, many worries begin to lose their grip. Most of them exist only inside imagined scenarios. Today, you can begin with very small moments. Feel the air filling your lungs. Notice the sensations in your body, and truly listen to the person who is speaking to you. Every time you consciously return to the present moment, you strengthen your inner stability. Little by little, you begin to discover that peace is not hidden in some perfect future. It is already available in the moment you are living right now. The fifth quiet realignment of the mind you can begin today is practicing the gentle release of unnecessary attachments. Many worries survive simply because we continue feeding them. The mind revisits the same stories, nurtures the same fears, and clings to the same expectations. Yet the Dharma reminds us that everything that exists is meant to change. When you truly accept this reality, you can begin to gently release what you can never permanently possess or control. That may be a relationship, an expectation, an image of yourself, or a fear about the future. This process takes time. It is not about forcing detachment. It is about slowly loosening the grip of the hand that has been holding on too tightly. Each time you notice a recurring worry, ask yourself whether it truly deserves all of your energy. Each time an expectation causes you pain, pause and wonder what might happen if you simply allowed it to breathe. Inner freedom often appears not when you add something new to your life, but when you finally stop carrying what was never meant to stay. Before we finish this reflection, I'd like to invite you to slow down for just a moment. Gently set down whatever you've been carrying since the beginning of your day. Notice your breathing without trying to change it. Remember that quiet exhaustion we talked about at the very beginning? And remember this essential truth. What drains you is not always what happens to you. More often, it is the inner struggle against what is already here. Now, simply give yourself permission to be present with yourself. No effort is required. For just a few moments, stop trying to fix your life. Stop trying to figure out every emotion, every worry, and every uncertainty. Simply allow yourself to be here, exactly as you are. If your heart is tired, acknowledge that tiredness. If your mind feels restless, acknowledge the restlessness. If fear is still present, don't rush to make it disappear. The Buddha observed that whatever we look at with mindful awareness gradually loses the power it once held in the shadows. Perhaps one part of you has been carrying expectations that have become too heavy. Perhaps another part is still holding on to an old wound, a disappointment, or an attachment that is finally ready to be released. You don't have to let go of everything today. You don't have to become perfectly peaceful overnight. You can simply begin by gently loosening what has been held too tightly for far too long. Take a slow, steady breath. Observe your heart. Observe your emotions. Observe the stories your mind sometimes creates to explain its suffering. Then remember this simple truth. Everything changes. Emotions change. Relationships change. The seasons of life change. And you too are constantly changing. Perhaps the deepest understanding we have explored together is this. Some suffering lasts not because life refuses to move forward, but because part of us keeps holding on to what has already gone. The moment that resistance begins to soften even slightly, a new kind of peace becomes possible. You do not have to control every step of your future. You do not need to have every answer today. You do not have to be stronger than life itself. You can learn to move with it. And perhaps from this day forward, whenever worry returns, you will remember this. Peace is not the absence of uncertainty. Peace is the ability to remain present even when uncertainty exists. If this reflection has brought even a little calm into your heart, continue this journey with us. Share this video with someone who may also be carrying an invisible burden. Subscribe to Timeless Dharma if you'd like to continue exploring these quiet truths that gently transform the way we relate to ourselves. Today, you've explored the roots of suffering, the silent illusions the mind protects, and the quiet realignments that restore deeper inner peace. Nothing changes in a single moment, but every sincere moment of awareness opens the door to a new direction. Walk gently, breathe with confidence. Allow life to unfold the way it is meant to. And always remember this, peace does not come when the world finally becomes quiet. Peace begins the moment your mind stops fighting what it was never meant to control.